There are things in life you think you're prepared for. You survived betrayal, loneliness, silent nights, and 1,000 unshed tears. I believed I was steel. I believed nothing could break me anymore. I was wrong. What broke me wasn't an enemy. It wasn't illness or old age. It was my son. The boy I raised. The boy I once held as he cried because the moon looked lonely. I came to his house that day like I had so many times before, with a warm dish in my hands and the smallest hope in my chest. And I heard it. Why is she even still alive? A voice. His. Carl. Then laughter. Not cruel. Just casual. As if what he'd said was perfectly ordinary. I stood on the walkway, just behind the wooden fence, holding a warm glass dish of peach cobbler. My fingers didn't tremble. Not yet. I didn't leave. I walked forward. Past the tables, the chairs, the string lights, the people who avoided my eyes. My family. Or what used to be. Oh. Mabel. We didn't know you were coming, said Jody. Her tone too bright. The same voice that had laughed. I brought cobbler, I said. I found an empty chair in the far corner of the yard and sat. Carl raised a bottle of beer. To family, he said. Glasses clinked. No one looked my way. My grandchildren ran past me. 3 times. Not one stopped. Not one said, "Hi, Grandma." Maybe they didn't recognize me without the grocery bags, the apron, the candy in my pocket. I stayed. I watched. I smiled when no one was looking. I didn't cry. Not yet. I stayed until the end. No one asked me to help. No one stopped me either. I picked up napkins. Collected sticky plates. Wiped down the table with a damp paper towel. People started going inside. I held the empty cobbler dish against my chest. It was still warm from the afternoon sun. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked away. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't even turn on the radio. I just drove. Home. Alone. That night, I made a single cup of coffee in my smallest percolator. I sat by the window, the same window Carl used to sit near when he was little, his knees too long for the chair, his pencil marks still faint on the wall. He used to need me. Now he barely tolerates me. I didn't speak to a soul that Sunday. Didn't answer the phone. Didn't open the mail. I didn't want to see his name on the utility bill again. It was their house now. But it used to be mine. $40,000 from my retirement account. That was my gift. A down payment. Just to help you get started, I said. No paperwork. No strings. Just a mother's faith. A second chance. I opened the old cabinet and pulled out the folder I hadn't touched in years. On the label, Carl, house. Inside, purchase agreement, deed, and a handwritten note. My handwriting. I give this gift freely, expecting nothing in return. Because you are my son. Reading that line hurt more than anything that had happened that day. The next day, I made a call. Not to Carl. Not to Jody. To Lena. She wasn't exactly a friend. Not someone I saw often. But we played bridge together for years, and I knew one thing about her: she was smart. Retired from probate law. The kind of woman who never missed a detail. When she picked up, I didn't explain everything. I just said, I have questions. About gifts. Property. And wills. She didn't ask why. She only said, come by tomorrow. Bring everything. I slept better that night than I had in months. No pills. Just stillness. Not peace, not yet, but something close. Resolve. In the morning, I ironed my slacks. Put on real shoes. A good coat, even though it was too warm for it. When you're preparing to take your life back, you dress like it matters. Lena's house smelled like lemon cleaner and peppermint tea. Her hair was silver and wild. She didn't smile much. She read the documents slowly. Didn't interrupt. Then she looked up and said, "You gave it to them. Legally, completely. There's no expectation of return." I nodded. "I know. But that doesn't mean you're powerless." She pulled out a legal pad. Started listing things. Power of attorney. Bank accounts. Healthcare proxy. Last will. Revocable trust. "You can't take the house back," she said. "But you can make sure they get nothing else." That was enough for me. She handed me the checklist. I folded it in half and tucked it into my purse. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table. No music. No TV. Just silence. I welcomed it. I took a clean sheet of paper and wrote one word at the top. Carl. Then I drew a single line through it. By Wednesday, I had baked a pie. Not for anyone else. Just for me. Apple. My favorite. Flaky crust, cinnamon heavy, thick slices. I let it cool, cut one neat piece, and left the rest covered in foil. Then I sat down with the checklist Lena had given me and opened my filing cabinet. I spent the day sorting through every document I'd neglected for years. Old policies. Expired IDs. My wedding license, now irrelevant. And a dozen birthday cards from Carl, most of them unsigned, just Mom written in a rushed scrawl. By the afternoon, I had one pile marked keep and one marked shred. Then I did something I hadn't done in a decade. I wrote a new will. Not a long one. Just enough to be clear. Everything I owned, the house, the money, the insurance, would go to a nonprofit hospice care program I used to volunteer for. Not to Carl. Not to his kids. Not to Jody. I signed it. Dated it. Called Lena again. She told me what else I'd need to make it hold. Witnesses. Notarization. "I'll come with you," she said. "We'll get it done." That night, I opened my fridge and looked at the pie again. Still untouched. I picked up a fork and ate the whole slice. It tasted like freedom. I spent Thursday morning in the garden. Not planting. Not weeding. Just sitting. Letting the heat sit on my shoulders like a familiar shawl. The birds came and went. I didn't speak to them, though sometimes I used to. Now, I just listened. My neighbor, Miss Adeline, waved to me from across the fence. Her arms were thin like paper and wrapped in soft sleeves that looked older than me. She didn't ask how I was doing. She just nodded, slow, knowing, and I nodded back. By noon, I made myself another cup of coffee. It wasn't habit anymore. It was ritual. Something to keep my hands busy. The house was too quiet again. I turned on the old radio in the kitchen, static, then jazz. Not the kind Carl ever liked. He once told me it gave him a headache. I left it on anyway. As the saxophone curled around the corners of the room, I walked to the bookshelf and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in over 10 years. Inside were old photographs. Not albums, just loose prints, faded and bent at the edges. I pulled out the first one that caught my eye. It was Carl at age 9. A school photo. His front teeth were missing. He had written on the back in pencil, "I'm gonna be president one day." I smiled. Then cried. Then stopped crying as fast as I had started. I'd gotten good at that, putting the lid back on the pot just before it boils. Another photo, Carl at 16, beside a car he hadn't earned. I had co-signed the loan. Paid half the monthly note. He never thanked me for it. Not once. But back then, it didn't matter. I was just proud he had a car. That he had something to make him feel grown. Next was a picture of me. Taken by Carl, I think. I was 36. Hair pinned up, hands in flour, laughing at something off frame. I didn't remember the moment. But I looked happy. I looked alive. That woman didn't yet know how hard things would get. I set the photos down and went to the bedroom closet. There was one more thing I needed to see. A small cedar box. Locked. But I remembered the key. Inside were letters I had written, not to anyone, just to myself. Pages of worry. Prayers. Nights when Carl hadn't come home. Days when I'd found bruises on my arms and told myself they didn't mean anything. When his father, that cruel, charming man, would slam the door so hard the pictures fell off the wall. And I would pick them up. Quietly. Always quietly. One of the letters ended with a line I didn't remember writing. He doesn't know I used to be somebody. I folded the letter slowly. Then stood in front of the hallway mirror. My face looked tired. But not weak. It looked like survival. By late afternoon, I had made a decision. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a choice. A quiet turn of the wheel inside me. I would take down every picture of Carl in the house. Not out of hate. But because I didn't want to lie to myself anymore. Pretending he was still my boy. Pretending there was still something gentle in him. That was the cruelest part of this entire journey, realizing the person you loved never really loved you back in the way you believed. That you were useful. Convenient. Expected. But never cherished. I pulled down the frame in the hallway, Carl's graduation photo. Then the one in the living room, Carl holding his newborn daughter. I hesitated. That baby was my granddaughter. Hazel. I hadn't seen her in 2 years. She probably wouldn't remember me now. She wouldn't know I used to sing to her, whisper stories to her in the dark when her mother left the room. I almost left the photo. But then I remembered the birthday party. Her 7th. I had come with gifts. She had looked right through me, like I was a ghost. Jody hadn't corrected her. Carl hadn't even noticed. I took the photo down. One by one, they came off the walls. Some had been there so long the wall behind them was cleaner than the rest of the paint. It felt like uncovering old skin. The layers beneath who I used to be. That night, I took a walk. Just around the block. My knees ached, but my heart felt light. Lighter than it had in years. I passed 3 houses with children playing in the yard. Their laughter didn't sting, not anymore. It sounded like wind chimes. Far away, but pleasant. When I got home, I opened the windows. Let the breeze in. Let the night come close. I made a list. Not of chores. Not of bills. But of everything I still wanted to do. Simple things. Take the train to the lake. Replant the tomatoes. Paint the spare bedroom. Throw away the old answering machine. Donate Carl's childhood books. Learn to bake that lemon tart Lena swears by. I wrote at the bottom. Live for me. Then I circled it. The next morning, Carl called. I stared at the phone. I let it ring. 6 times. Then silence. No voicemail. He didn't call again. I wasn't surprised. Carl didn't call again that day. Or the next. But on Saturday, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was him. I hadn't seen him this close in nearly a year. He looked older. Not in the hair or the skin, but in the posture. Shoulders tight. Mouth pinched. Like he was chewing words he couldn't swallow. I didn't open the door right away. I made him wait. Then I unlatched the top lock, then the bottom. Slowly. Purposefully. "Hi, Mom," he said, as if nothing had happened. I didn't reply. He glanced down, shifting from foot to foot like he had somewhere more important to be. I was in the neighborhood," he said. "Thought I'd stop by." I stepped aside. He walked in like it still belonged to him. Like nothing had changed. But it had. Every photo of him was gone. Every object that once reminded me of him had been tucked away or thrown out. Carl looked around, eyes flickering. "Did you redecorate?" "No," I said. He turned. "Something feels different." "It is." I gestured toward the table. "You can sit. If you have something to say." He sat. Then tapped his fingers against the edge of the chair. The silence stretched. It used to make me anxious, the quiet. I used to feel it. Now I let it stay. Carl finally spoke. Jody said you've been distant lately. I smiled. She noticed? He blinked. Yeah. She said you left the cookout early. I stayed until the end. She said you didn't seem yourself. I was exactly myself, I said. For the first time in years. He didn't like that. There was a pause. He folded his hands on the table like a schoolboy. I wanted to ask you something, he said. Of course he did. When you helped with the house, did you ever? I mean, were there any documents we should know about? There it was. I let the question hang in the air for a full 30 seconds. Watched him squirm. Let him taste the discomfort I had swallowed for decades. I don't believe so, I said. Unless you count the note I wrote you. His brow furrowed. What note? I stood, walked to the drawer, and pulled out the faded paper. The one that said, I give this gift freely, expecting nothing in return. Because you are my son. I laid it in front of him. He read it. His lips parted slightly. I don't remember this. I do. He looked up. So, you don't want anything back? No, I said. I don't want anything. He relaxed a little. Too easily. But that's not the same as giving you everything. His expression changed, subtly, but enough. A flicker of calculation behind the eyes. What does that mean? It means I've made other plans. For the rest. For what's still mine. He leaned forward. Mom, if this is about the party. It's not about the party. Then what? You're mad about something, Jody said. I tilted my head. Carl. You said it. What? You said it, I repeated. I heard you. He went still. I watched him try to remember. The wheels turning. And then, denial. I don't know what you're talking about. You said, why is she even still alive? His mouth opened, but no words came. Don't lie to me, I said. I was standing right there. With the cobbler. He exhaled hard. It was a joke. No. It wasn't. He stood now, pacing. Okay, so maybe I said something dumb. But that's not a reason to. To what? I asked. To cut us out. He was louder now. His voice bouncing off the walls like it used to when he was a teenager and didn't get his way. I remained seated. Carl took a breath, trying to soften his tone. Mom, look, I get it. You're hurt. But you're still family. I'm your son. You were, I said. He froze. I continued, you stopped being my son the day you laughed at the thought of me dying. That's not fair. No, Carl. What's not fair is giving your life to someone who forgets you exist the moment you stop being useful. He shook his head. This is insane. Do you know how it'll look? If you change your will. I already did. He blinked. What? I changed it. His hands curled into fists at his sides. To who? That's not your business. I'm your family. Then act like it. The tension in the room thickened. Carl stared at me. For the first time, really looked. You used to need me, he said. No, I replied. You needed me. I stood up now. Looked him in the eyes. I gave you everything. My time. My money. My patience. My love. And when I needed respect, just respect, you gave me a punchline. He looked away. I walked to the door. You can go now. He didn't move. Carl, I said firmly. Leave. He turned slowly and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he hesitated. Is there anything I can do to fix this? I paused. No, I said. But there's something you can do. He looked at me, hopeful. You can learn what it means to feel regret. And I closed the door behind him. I stood there for a long moment, hand on the knob. Then I exhaled. Not with anger. With release. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. It wasn't grief that pulled me from bed. It was clarity. I brewed my tea slowly, like ritual. The house was silent, the kind of silence that used to ache. But now, it felt like safety. The absence of Carl's voice, of tension wrapped in politeness, of waiting for kindness that never came, it was relief. I carried my cup to the table, sat down, and opened a blank sheet of paper. Not to Carl. Not to anyone in my family. To myself. And then, to the living. Dear Mabel. You have lived long enough to know that silence can be cruel. But today, your silence is strength. You chose to listen, and then walk away. That is not weakness. That is a beginning. Don't grieve what was never truly yours. Don't beg for love that must be earned from your bones. You are allowed to want more. Even now. Especially now. Forgiveness doesn't require reunion. Peace doesn't mean pretending. And family? Family is who stays when the music stops. Love. You. I folded the letter and placed it inside the book of Psalms I hadn't opened in years. It would stay there, tucked between pages of lamentations and hope. Then I walked outside. The garden was overgrown. I hadn't touched it since the summer. Dead leaves blanketed the herbs. The lavender was brittle, the rosemary gray. But something still fought beneath the surface. A tiny sprout of green pushed through the dead. Quiet. Resilient. I knelt. Dug my fingers into the soil. The earth was cold, but not lifeless. Just resting. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I took the bus into town. I didn't need to, I still had groceries, still had everything I needed. But I wanted to see the world with new eyes. The city had changed. The coffee shop was now a florist. The bookstore was gone. There were more dogs than children. More silence and faces than smiles. But I walked slowly. Deliberately. People passed, some nodding. Others avoiding eye contact. I smiled at all of them anyway. At the corner, I saw her. She was sitting on a bench, knitting something bright yellow, a scarf maybe. She looked about my age, maybe a little younger. Hair up in a gray twist. Eyes like they'd seen a storm or two. She looked up, noticed me watching. Want to sit? She asked, nodding to the space beside her. I hesitated. Then sat. We didn't speak at first. The yarn clicked in rhythm. A kind of peace settled between us, that quiet understanding old women sometimes have. Finally, she said, "You're not from this side of town." I smiled. Used to be. You left? I did. For a long time. You back now? I thought about that. I think so, I said. I'm reclaiming something. She chuckled. Ain't we all? We sat for a while. Then she offered her name. I'm Bet. Just Bet. I liked that. Mabel, I said. She looked at me a moment. Then said, Mabel's a name with weight. Strong. No one's called me strong in a long time. Well, she said, nodding. They should've. We spoke for almost an hour. About gardens. About God. About regrets that shape you, and the ones you shake off like dust. She told me her daughter hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. Over a church disagreement. I told her my son had erased me in one sentence. She didn't gasp. She didn't pity. She just said, they always come around when the will gets read. I laughed. Hard. It felt good. It felt like mine. Before I left, Bet asked, you coming to the meeting? What meeting? She pointed across the street. A small community center. Brick walls. Painted windows. Widows, grandmas, and women done with being quiet, she said. We meet Wednesdays. We drink tea and talk. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we cuss. Sounds like church, I said. Better, she winked. I told her I'd think about it. But I knew I would go. That night, I opened my old photo albums. Not to weep. To choose. I picked out the ones that mattered, the ones where I was smiling for real. Not performing. Photos of my mother, the one who taught me how to plant tomatoes. Photos of my husband, before he faded. Photos of me holding baby Carl, the version of him that still felt warm in my arms. I didn't throw away the others. I placed them in a separate box. A memory isn't an enemy. It just doesn't always get to stay. The next morning, I started writing letters. Not to Carl. To people I had forgotten in the rush of raising him. To old friends I hadn't called since the funeral. To a librarian who once let me borrow books on her own card when I couldn't afford the late fees. To a woman I met once on a bus, who gave me a piece of candy and said, "You look like someone who needs sweetness today." Each letter was small. But every one of them made something inside me stand up straighter. That Sunday, I stood in church again. Not for Carl. Not for forgiveness. For gratitude. I didn't cry during the hymns. I didn't close my eyes too tight. I just stood. Felt the music in my knees. Sang off key like always. The woman behind me tapped my shoulder. "You've got a lovely voice," she lied. I smiled. "You're kind to say that." She nodded. "You coming to potluck next week?" I hesitated. Then said, "Only if you save me a seat." That night, I wrote one more letter. This one I didn't sign. I left it folded on the bench where I'd met Bet. It read, "To the woman who thinks she has nothing left. You are not a ghost. You are not invisible. You are still here. And that is more powerful than you know." The following Wednesday, I stood outside the community center with a bag of oatmeal cookies and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I almost turned back. It wasn't fear, not exactly. Just the kind of anxiety that settles into you after a lifetime of being small, polite, and unnoticeable. But I'd told Bet I might come. And I'd made the cookies. So I went in. The room was warm, filled with the scent of chamomile, lavender, and lemon balm. Soft voices floated over mismatched teacups and old floral plates. Women were scattered across the room, some knitting, others pouring tea, some sitting in silence. And there was Bet, in a green cardigan, waving like we'd known each other for 20 years. "Mabel," she called. "Come in before the cookies get judged." I smiled, awkward and tight, but made my way over. She took the bag from me and placed it on a long table beside banana bread and something suspiciously burnt. Bet clapped her hands. "Ladies, we got a new face today." I froze. They all looked up. Not cruelly. Not even curiously. Just, openly. Like they were making space for me. "Say hello, dear," Bet whispered. I cleared my throat. "I'm Mabel. I live up near Holloway Lane. Used to teach home EC. And, I brought oatmeal cookies." Someone in the back said, "That's already 3 reasons to like you." Laughter. And just like that, I sat down and became one of them. Over tea, the stories flowed. One woman had lost her husband to cancer 2 months ago and couldn't sleep without playing his voicemail on repeat. Another had raised 5 children, none of whom called her anymore unless they needed money. One had left her abusive husband at 72 and was now learning how to use Tinder. I listened. I laughed. I cried when they did. And for once, I didn't apologize for my tears. Then it was Bet's turn. She looked at me when she started. "My daughter once told me I was the most selfish person she'd ever known," she said. "Because I chose to be happy after my husband died." The room went still. She said I was dishonoring his memory by smiling too soon. By dancing. By joining a choir. She paused. "But you know what dishonors memory? Pretending grief is a cage you're not allowed to leave." Heads nodded. Bet looked straight at me. "You get to leave the cage, Mabel. Even if you built it." After the meeting, Bet and I walked together toward the bus stop. You were quiet, she said. I was listening. She nodded. Good. But next time, you tell your story. All of it. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, some stories don't feel finished yet. Then you better keep showing up until they are. At home, I sat in the silence again. But it was different now. It didn't press against me like it used to. It didn't fill the corners of the room with shame. It just was. And I was in it. 3 days later, a letter arrived. The envelope was unfamiliar. Handwritten. No return address. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a simple white card. One line. I heard you've been visiting town. My hands trembled. The handwriting was unmistakable. Carl. I dropped the letter. My knees gave a little. It wasn't an apology. Not even a full sentence. Just a message. Like a thread being dangled. An invitation? A warning? I stared at it on the table like it might move. Then I picked it up and tore it in half. I didn't burn it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just dropped it in the trash. Because a thread is only dangerous if you pull it. That night, I told Bet. She looked at me over her cup of Earl Grey and said, that man still thinks he owns the room. I smiled. Not anymore. She raised her cup. To women who don't answer letters. Later, I sat at my kitchen table again. No tea this time. Just the lamp's soft glow and the sound of the wind scratching the windows. I wrote another letter. Not to Carl. To myself again. Dear Mabel. He saw you. That means you're no longer invisible. But being seen is not the same as being welcomed. You owe no one your peace. You owe no one a seat at your table. He heard you were living. Let him wonder how. I tucked that one away in my psalms again. Right beside the first. The next Wednesday, I brought lemon muffins to the meeting. I told my story. All of it. How I'd spent decades shrinking inside a family that grew like ivy over me, clinging, choking. How I heard those words on the porch, why is she still alive? How I walked away from my son and never looked back. No one gasped. No one flinched. One woman reached for my hand and squeezed it. Another whispered, "You are so brave." And I believed her. For the first time. After the meeting, Bet handed me a flyer. A weekend retreat. Just for women like us. Talks, meals, nature walks, bonfires. You should come, she said. I don't know. Mabel, she said, with that same firm voice, you've walked through hell and made it to the other side. Maybe now it's time to walk through the woods. At home, I pinned the flyer to the fridge. I didn't decide that night. I didn't need to. Because sometimes healing isn't about choices. It's about letting something good sit on your fridge until it doesn't scare you anymore. The retreat was held at an old camp nestled in the pines, 3 hours north, where the sky stretched wide and the air smelled of wet leaves and pine resin. I almost didn't go. But Bet picked me up early Saturday, already packed and smiling like a child going to a school picnic. I brought a bag of warm sweaters and my favorite mug, the one with the crack no one notices unless they know where to look. We arrived just before noon. Women were already gathered outside, some laughing, others stretching their arms toward the sunlight as if it were a kind of prayer. The lodge was wooden and creaky and filled with old quilts and even older sofas. I felt nervous. Then Bet nudged me. This is where you remember who you are, Mabel. That first day passed like a dream. We did breathing exercises that made me dizzy and drank mint tea around a circle where a woman named Farah sang a song about her miscarriage that made everyone cry. There were no phones allowed. No clocks on the walls. Only now. Only breath and story and time uncoiled. That night, I sat by the fire pit, a blanket around my knees, listening to the crackle of wood and the quiet hum of frogs in the distance. Bet had gone to bed early, murmuring something about her hips and tea dreams. I was about to do the same when someone sat down beside me. He wasn't part of the retreat. That was clear instantly. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a brown coat that looked military, or at least official. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. His hair was mostly gray, cropped short, but his eyes were familiar. Too familiar. He didn't look at me at first. Just stared into the fire. Then, softly, "You're Mabel Craythorne." I froze. My stomach tightened. "Yes," I said slowly. "And who are you?" He smiled faintly. "Name's Enoch." I narrowed my eyes. Should that mean something to me? He turned to me now. His gaze was calm. Measured. But something in it, something deep behind the stillness, twisted my gut. "No," he said. "But I knew your husband. A long time ago." I stared at him. "You knew Carl?" He nodded. I wanted to get up. To leave. But something held me there. Enoch reached into his coat and pulled out a thin notebook. Leather-bound. Worn. He held it out. "What is that?" "Carl's journal," he said. "From years ago. Before you met." I didn't take it. "Why are you giving this to me?" He looked down at his hands. "Because he wouldn't want you to see it. And that means you should." Silence. Only the fire popping. "You're trying to stir something," I said, voice tight. "Why?" "I was in the army with him. We were stationed in Germany together. He was different back then." I didn't answer. He looked at me again. "He wrote about you. Before he ever met you." My heart thudded. "That's not possible." "He saw you once. In a photo. A group picture from a women's choir at your old college. You were in the back. He fixated on you. Said you had eyes like frost and fire. Told me he'd find you one day." I swallowed. "I was 19 in that photo." "I know." He handed me the journal again. This time, I took it. Back in my cabin, under dim yellow light, I opened the leather cover. The handwriting was unmistakable. Carl's. The first pages were mundane. Notes about drills, rations, the loneliness of barracks life. Then, one page shifted. "Saw her again today." Her photo taped to the notice board. Same eyes. The kind that see through men. The kind that needs softening. I asked a friend in admin to look her up. Mabel Whitcomb. From Kansas. Choir girl. Unremarkable. But I know better. One day, I'll write her into my life. I closed the book. I couldn't breathe. I didn't sleep. I sat up until dawn reading every page. Carl had tracked my whereabouts. Knew my class schedule before he ever approached me at that church event. He described how he adjusted himself, his speech, his hobbies, even his smile, to be what I wanted. To be the man I would say yes to. It hadn't been a meeting. It had been a plan. A long, slow hunt. In the morning, I found Enoch sitting on a bench by the lake, tossing breadcrumbs to ducks like he had no idea he'd just upended my life. I held the journal up. "Why now?" He shrugged. "Because your son is worse." That froze me. "What?" "Carl's sick. But Asa. He's calculated. Dangerous. Your husband was always violent in emotion. But your son? He's a surgeon with his cruelty. Cuts slow." My hands trembled. "Why do you care?" "Because your name is still circled," Enoch said softly. "In Asa's file." "What file?" He looked me dead in the eye. "You think I'm just some old soldier. But I spent 20 years in intelligence. I've kept track of men like Carl. And sons like Asa. Who inherit shadows." I sat down hard beside him. "What does he want?" Enoch looked away. "He's been building something. Online. A following. Quiet. Dark. And you're a crack in his image. The one who walked away." My stomach turned. "You're telling me my son is, what? Dangerous?" A criminal? I'm telling you to stay gone. To stay erased. Silence. Then I asked, why now? Enoch took a deep breath. Because a week ago, I intercepted a message. Short. Encrypted. But clear. He reached into his coat again, pulled out a paper. One line typed. Soon, she'll disappear for good. I stood. My knees barely held me. You're scaring me. I know, Enoch said. But fear is better than silence. He looked up. Read the journal again. Carefully. Especially what he wrote about Holloway. My eyes narrowed. Holloway? He nodded. I thought you lived there by accident, Mabel. But nothing in Carl's world was accidental. That night, back in my cabin, I flipped to the end of the journal. The last few pages were thin, almost torn. And there it was. I saw the land today. North of Holloway. Remote. Quiet. Room for a cellar. For a second life. She won't know. Not at first. My throat closed. Carl had planned our move there years before I ever stepped foot on that land. The garden. The woods. The shed he insisted I never use. All of it had been part of something else. Something I hadn't seen. I went to bed the next morning. Told her everything. She didn't gasp. Didn't flinch. She just took my hands and said, "You're not going back there alone. I have to get something." She shook her head. Not without me. We returned to Holloway 2 nights later. Bet insisted on driving. She said I wasn't steady enough, and she was right. My hands still trembled every time I touched that journal. I'd read it 3 times already, underlining the word cellar, she won't know, Holloway. We left at dusk. I don't know why that felt safer. By the time we reached the long gravel drive, the moon was hanging low and red behind the trees. The house sat quiet, too quiet, like it had been holding its breath since I left. "I'll wait here," Bet said, parking the car with the lights off. 15 minutes. Then I'm coming in. I nodded and stepped out into the night. The front door creaked open easily. No sign of Asa. No sign of anyone. But the house had changed. Not physically. But something was off. Like the walls knew something they weren't saying. Like they'd been whispering to each other in my absence. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't check the living room. I went straight to the shed. The one Carl said never to use. The one he'd always locked with 2 bolts and a padlock that no key on my ring had ever opened. But when I reached it, the lock was gone. Just hanging open, like someone had finally invited me in. Inside, the air was stale and metallic. I clicked on my flashlight. Dust floated like ghosts. The shed was empty, except for one thing, a wooden door in the floor, flush with the boards. A cellar. The kind he wrote about. I knelt down. There was no handle, just a small metal ring. I tugged. The door groaned open. A ladder led down into darkness. Everything in me screamed no. But I went anyway. The cellar was deeper than I expected. Cold. Dry. And built with intention. Not like a farm root cellar. No, this was constructed. Reinforced walls. Poured concrete. Electricity, wires snaking through the ceiling. And lights. Fluorescent bulbs that flickered to life when I flipped the switch at the base of the ladder. My stomach turned. There were rooms. Not just one open space. Rooms with doors. 3 of them. Each with a small square window in the upper part. Each with a bolt. It looked like a place built for holding people. The first room was empty. The second too. But the third held something. Not a person. A chair. A metal chair, bolted to the floor. And on the wall behind it, photos. Dozens of them. Old black and white snapshots. Of me. Some from when I was in college. Some from before I met Carl. Some recent. Too recent. There was one from my walk to the grocery store last spring. One of me drinking tea by the window 2 weeks before I left. I gasped. My knees buckled. I nearly fell. And then I saw the words written in red ink across the largest photo, one from our wedding day. Erase the soul. Keep the shell. A sound behind me. I turned. Nothing. Just the hum of the lights. But something had shifted. The air. The silence. I felt watched. I ran. Climbed the ladder so fast I scraped my hands. Burst from the shed like I was being chased by fire. And standing outside, Bet. Eyes wide. Face pale. Someone's watching, she whispered. From the woods. I didn't even look. Get in the car, I said. Now. We drove straight to the motel just outside town. Bet didn't ask questions until we were inside, door locked, curtains shut, lights off. Then she turned to me. What the hell was that place? I told her everything. The rooms. The chair. The photos. The words. And when I finished, Bet said something that chilled me more than anything I'd seen. That wasn't built for someone else, Mabel. That was built for you. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Bet. We sat in silence until dawn, drinking weak motel coffee and listening to the trucks pass on the highway. At 6:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. No number. Just a message. You shouldn't have gone back. I showed it to Bet. Her lips tightened. He knows. That day, we drove to the sheriff's office. I thought maybe I could report what I saw. The cellar. The photos. The message. But the moment we stepped in, my heart sank. Behind the desk, Sheriff Darla. An old friend of Carl's. A fishing buddy. A poker night pal. He smiled like nothing had happened. Mabel, he said. Heard you were out of town. Everything all right? I stared at him. He knew. He knew. I shook my head. No, I said. Just passing through. Back in the car, I was shaking. Bet gripped the wheel. We can't go to the police, I whispered. No, she agreed. Not here. I looked at her. What now? She reached into her coat and handed me something. A slip of paper. A name and number. Someone who doesn't wear a badge, she said. But knows how to fight monsters. That night, I texted the number. Gave only one word. Ready. 10 minutes later, a reply. Then let's begin. The text message was brief, but it carried weight. Her name was Jade. A woman with a history as tangled as mine, maybe worse. Bet dialed the number on her phone, and after a few rings, Jade answered, her voice calm but firm. I've been watching your story, Mabel. And I think I can help. We met the next day in a small cafe downtown. Jade was younger than I expected, late 40s, with sharp eyes and a scar that ran down her left cheek. She carried herself with the kind of confidence born from surviving storms that break most. I was where you are, she said. Erased. Forgotten. Betrayed. I nodded, gripping my teacup. My ex-husband was a man like Carl, Jade continued. Charming in public. Cruel behind closed doors. When I left, he made sure everyone thought I was crazy. She smiled bitterly. Sound familiar? Over the next hours, Jade laid out a plan. We start by understanding the past, she said. Who Carl really was before he became your husband. The man who built that cellar. She pulled out a folder filled with documents, military records, old news clippings, and a few photographs. One photo caught my eye, Carl in uniform, younger, softer. But the eyes, still sharp, but haunted. He was recruited for a special unit, Jade said. Top secret. They trained him to control people, to break them down. He wasn't always the man you knew. Jade's words hit me like a blow. I thought I knew him. You knew the surface, she said. But he was a prisoner of that past. A broken boy trying to bury his own ghosts. We sifted through the papers. One report stood out, an incident in Germany where Carl was disciplined for excessive force during a mission. Jade shook her head. That's where things went dark. That's when he started keeping secrets he brought home. That evening, Jade and Bet stayed at my place. We pored over the journal again. I read Carl's words with new eyes. He was a man fighting wars I never knew. But his way of fighting turned inward and outward on us. Jade pointed to a passage. I can't let her see the man I was. She deserves better, even if it means losing her. See that? Jade said. He wanted to protect you. But his protection was a cage. Days passed. I felt the weight of two worlds, the loving father I thought I knew, and the haunted soldier I was uncovering. One morning, Jade brought a file on Asa. The file was thin. But the pictures told stories, late-night meetings, encrypted messages, shadowy figures. Your son is walking the same path, Jade warned. But with darker intent. Then came a knock at the door. A man in a dark suit. No badge. But an edge of authority. I'm here to help, he said simply. His name was Eli. Together, the four of us planned the next move. Eli would infiltrate Asa's network. Jade and I would dig deeper into Carl's past. Bet would watch the home front. That night, I wrote in my journal. They say the past is a chain. But maybe it's a map. A map to freedom. The night was thick with fog when Eli slipped out. He moved like a shadow, disappearing down the gravel road toward the town. His mission, to infiltrate Asa's growing network. Meanwhile, Jade and I went through Carl's old papers and photos in the quiet of my kitchen. Pieces of a puzzle began to fit. We found a hidden letter, written in Carl's hand but never sent. To whoever finds this, the past is not dead. It lives in the things we hide. In the silence, in the fear. I felt the weight of his regrets. But also the danger. As days passed, Eli sent updates, encrypted texts that told stories of secret meetings, cryptic codes, and whispers of something bigger. One night, Jade and I uncovered a photo of Carl shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. The caption, Berlin, 1998. Operation Firefall. What was Operation Firefall? I asked. Jade's face darkened. That was when everything changed. The deeper we dug, the more I understood. Carl wasn't just a soldier. He was part of something covert. Something that controlled lives. One evening, my phone buzzed. A new message from Eli. Got in. Following the lead. More soon. I sat by the window, holding the journal close. The past and present were colliding. And the truth was coming. Eli's messages slowed. The silence made my chest tighten. Then, one night, my phone buzzed again. Compromised. Extraction needed. I read it over and over. Eli was in danger. I called Bet. We have to act, I said. Now. Bet nodded. I'm coming to get you. The next day, Jade and I gathered what we could from Carl's papers and prepared to meet Bet and Eli. Eli arrived with bruises and a warning. Asa knows I'm onto him, he said. He's dangerous, Mabel. More than you imagine. Jade's face hardened. We knew this wouldn't be easy. Meanwhile, I kept reading the journal. One entry stood out. She deserves the truth, but not the cost. I wondered, how much was the truth worth? That night, Asa sent me a message. Stop digging. Or you'll regret it. I didn't reply. Days later, Jade uncovered a photo of Carl with a woman I never knew, her face fierce, proud. Who is she? I asked. His first love, Jade said. Before me. Before you. The pieces of the puzzle grew darker. We were all caught in a web of secrets. The air was thick with anticipation as Jade, Bet, Eli, and I prepared for the next step. Eli had arranged a meeting with two men who'd once served alongside Carl, men who might hold the missing pieces of his story. We met them at a quiet diner on the edge of town. Both men were older now, their faces weathered but their eyes sharp. They greeted Eli with a nod, then looked at me. "You're Mabel Craythorne," one said. "We've heard about you." The first man, Thomas, leaned forward. "Carl wasn't the man you remember. He was broken long before he met you." The second, Henry, added, "He carried secrets, ones that cost him more than you know." They told stories of missions gone wrong, of a man haunted by shadows he couldn't outrun. One story struck me the most. Carl had once saved Henry's life, but in doing so, made an enemy that never forgot. "That enemy is Ace's shadow too," Henry said grimly. The truth was darker than I imagined. That night, I wrote in my journal, "The past is not just a memory. It's a force. One that can break or bind us." I never thought I'd plan a trap for my own son. But Asa left me no choice. We gathered everything: Carl's journal, Eli's evidence, Jade's files, even old letters from Henry and Thomas. Then we made a plan. We would expose Asa, not through violence, but through the truth. Eli had found proof: documents signed under false names, blackmail records, digital transactions, voices recorded in the dark. Bet contacted a reporter, an old friend who once owed Carl his life. She agreed to run the story, but only if it was airtight. We had 4 days. Each hour felt like a blade pressed closer to my chest. Asa was watching me. I could feel it in the quiet of my home, in the shifting shadows. That night, I opened Carl's journal for what I thought was the last time. There, written in shaky pen, was a final line. "If she ever reads this, tell her I loved her too late." I closed the book and whispered, "Too late is still something." On the day of the drop, we met the reporter in a neutral cafe. She wore sunglasses, even indoors, and carried a plain black case. Jade handed over the files. "Are you sure?" she asked me. "No," I said. "But it's time." Then the cafe door opened. Asa walked in. He didn't smile. Just walked right up to me and said, loud enough for the whole cafe to hear, "So this is how you end it? Like a coward?" I stood. "No, Asa. This is how I begin again." Before he could speak again, the reporter snapped his picture. He froze. For the first time, I saw fear on his face. "Checkmate," Jade whispered beside me. Asa left. We waited in silence. That night, the story broke. News outlets picked it up in minutes. Headlines screamed. Local leader tied to international fraud network. Whistleblower reveals decades-old cover-up. I sat alone in my living room, lights off, heart beating like a war drum. Then I heard a knock. I opened the door. Asa. His face was different, not angry. Just empty. "You ruined me," he said. I looked him in the eyes. "You ruined yourself." He turned and walked into the night. The house was quiet after he left. Too quiet. Asa had disappeared into the night like smoke. And yet, the weight of him lingered. Like a storm that had passed but left the sky cracked. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. In the morning, I stood in front of his old bedroom. The door was still slightly ajar, just the way he always left it. I hesitated before entering. The room was untouched. Everything was in place. Books on the shelf. A chessboard on the desk. His coat hanging by the window. Only one thing was different. There was no reflection in the mirror. I stepped in. The air felt colder in there. Not temperature, energy. Still. Frozen. Expectant. Jade stood behind me. She didn't say a word, just held the door. I approached the bookshelf. All his old journals were there, worn leather covers, dates carved with his neat, obsessive hand. I opened the top one. The mother lies. The father suspects. But I am not theirs to keep. I came to understand. But they feared understanding. So they tried to control. I closed it. I opened another, dated only 2 years ago. She still calls me son. She doesn't know I've seen what she hasn't. She doesn't know what I've done. What I can do. I shivered. My fingers moved over the page. He wasn't hiding his mind. He was recording it, for me? For someone. Then I found something else, tucked beneath the drawer. An envelope addressed to Eli. I called for him. When he came up, I gave it to him. He opened it carefully. Inside was a note, one line, in S's sharp, angular writing. You are the only real one here. Never forget that. Eli looked at me. His face pale. His voice broken. Does that mean I'm real, and he wasn't? I don't know, I whispered. But you are mine. He buried his face in my shoulder. Then we found a small box under the bed. Inside it, a photograph, not from our time. Sepia-toned. Blurred at the edges. A woman, standing next to a tall figure with dark, sharp eyes. The woman looked like me. Only, older. Jade gasped. That's you. But, it's not. I shook my head. I've never taken that photo in my life. Behind it was a scrap of parchment. Foreign letters. Symbols I couldn't recognize. The handwriting was the same, his. Asa's. But the ink smelled metallic. Strange. Old. Bet reached in and pulled out something else. A tooth. Black. Smooth. Not human. None of us spoke for a long time. That night, Jade burned everything from the room in the backyard. I didn't stop her. Books. Photos. Notes. Even the chessboard. She asked me afterward. Do you think he'll come back? I looked at the sky. If he was ever really here, he never left. Candle. Weeks passed. Life began to grow again around the broken spaces. Eli started painting. Bet began teaching in the village. Jade stayed. She and I sat on the porch most evenings, not speaking, not needing to. But inside me, something had changed forever. One day, I received a package. No sender. No stamp. Just my name, Mabel. Inside, a stone. Small, gray, warm to the touch. When I held it, I heard a sound, like wind inside my own head. And a whisper. You looked into the truth. Most never do. You were never meant to forget. I dropped the stone. It didn't hit the ground. It simply vanished. After that, I stopped asking questions. Some truths weren't meant to be known. Some sons weren't meant to be born. Years passed. Eli grew up. Strong. Kind. Quiet. He never mentioned Asa again. But I saw it, in his paintings. Dark skies. Shadowed figures. Eyes that knew too much. Once, he asked me, "What do you think he wanted?" I thought for a long time. Then I answered, "Maybe, just to be seen. Even if he didn't belong." And that's when I realized. We all want that. Even the ones who come from somewhere else. I kept one thing from S's room. A page. Torn from his journal. It read, "If you are reading this, it means I failed at being what you needed. But I was never yours. And you were never mine. Yet somehow, you mattered more than anything else in this world. Asa." It's framed now. Above the mantle. People ask me about it sometimes. I just smile and say, it's a reminder that sometimes the deepest scars don't come from hate, but from mystery. And sometimes the most painful thing in the world is loving someone you were never meant to. Broken heart, thank you for staying with me until the very end of this heartbreaking story. Mabel heard just one sentence, "Why is she still alive?" And it shattered everything she believed in. But the real shock came later. This wasn't just a story about betrayal. It was about the weight of silence. About mysteries we were never meant to understand. And about a kind of love that leaves no answers, only scars. If this story touched you, leave a red heart in the comments. Support the channel with a like, thumbs up, hit that subscribe button bell, and share this video with someone who's ready to hear a truth that changes everything. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and those you love.